Have you ever been in a situation where you were really frustrated with pumping? Whether you pumped occasionally, or you pumped for work, or you pumped so that your partner could feed your baby, or you were an exclusive pumper. I think many of us have had this feeling of, why isn't this better? Why isn't this easier? It takes finding the right experts. It takes understanding the physiology of milk supply. It takes a lot of money. My special guest today is going to talk about how she's trying to change that, how she is trying to take these pumping machines, which literally just use vacuum pressure to suck milk out of our bodies, and create a different experience for those of us who are wanting to get milk out of our bodies for our babies in a way that is more comfortable and more effective. I bring you Eva. When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. Having known only a handful of people who had ever done it and only seeing it up close a couple of times, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a childbirth educator, and an internationally board-certified lactation consultant. I'm your host, Lo Nigrash, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore the systemic, medical, and cultural barriers that make feeding our babies so difficult, so that you know your baby feeding struggles were not your fault, and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are. I am here again with Eva Nagy-Gannon, and you are founder of the Eva Manual breast pump. And I'm so excited to have you back to share not only about the breast pump, because that's just a final culminating product of
Mhm.
all this research and development that you've been doing leading up to this product. And it's actually really interesting because when you reached out to me, you recognized me because we spoke years ago when you were in the research and development phase and I was working for a breast pump company. So that's really cool that we had this moment of, oh, wow, like we had been connected previously because you were researching breast pumps.
That's right. That's right. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be back here. Yeah, that was great. I remembered those times. That was like 3 years ago, or even, maybe even more, when we first talked about this, and we were still in the midst of getting interviews, speaking with everyone who is in this field and have knowledge about breast pumps and the industry. And I remember we were speaking about what is currently issues that you would see from the experience of other mothers about breast pumps, and how the insurance, I think we were talking about how the insurance is also kind of plays a part in the US,
Mhm.
especially in the breast pump industry. So yeah, it was great to reconnect now
Yeah,
that we have a final
yeah, I
product.
know. It was a full circle moment for sure. Yes. So, why don't we start by you talking about your epiphany of realizing why you have this phrase that breast pumps suck,
Yeah,
literally, like literally and metaphorically.
that's
Um,
correct.
yeah. Why don't you start out by how you realized this and came to this conclusion?
So the story started when I was breastfeeding my first child, and I was trying to use pumps because my husband wanted to feed the baby as well. So we were like, yeah, let's have some breast milk ready for him. And when I was pumping, I never really was able to express milk. I experienced a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain. It felt nothing like breastfeeding. I was really trying hard. I was trying different flange sizes. So like I was really trying to get it, and it didn't work. And that's such a doubt in my head about whether I'm able to breastfeed at all. If I don't see anything in the bottle, does my baby get any milk? So it was like a really not nice feeling and a realization. And then somebody, one of the moms on the Facebook group that I was part of, who was like a breastfeeding support Facebook group, posted an ultrasound video of an infant breastfeeding. And that was the
Mm.
first time I ever even considered what's going on inside the baby's mouth. Up until that point, I only see the baby on my breast, and that's it. I never even thought of what's going on inside. And I remember looking at that video and thinking, that's not what my breast pump is doing. It's like, how can it be so different from what the breast pump is doing? And that thought just really planted the seed in me to start to look into this a little bit more. First of all, I started to feel, right, there must be a breast pump that actually does this, and I should try that because it looks like what the infant is doing. It's pleasant, it's working, it's all, it has all the right signs for me. But and the breast pumps just feel so alien, and so I feel like a dairy cow, not like a mom. And so I was looking for a pump that does that. And yeah, the first shock is that there isn't any, right? So no matter where you look, it just doesn't exist. And then as we were digging deeper and deeper, you realize that, yeah, the entire industry is based on this idea of sucking machines, whichever way they achieve vacuum, that's the only thing they do. They just apply vacuum on the breast, suck the milk out. By the law of physics, the fluid is going to come out, or to some extent, it's going to come out more or less, but it's still completely different to what nature has developed or evolved through evolution over millions of years. And we were at that point, obviously, this was more of a hobby and an interest to start with. And of course, the frustration was driving me forward to look deeper into it and read more about it. And eventually, it was my husband who suggested he is in working in medical devices. So he has a great deal of knowledge about medical devices and the industry and how to innovate in this field. And he said, why don't we try and just do a small kind of proof of principle project around this, just a small one, just to see whether if it's physically possible at all to translate what the infant is doing in his mouth into some sort of a technology, so just very basic. And we got some governmental funding to do that. So we did that. And with that proof of concept, we approached the University of Galway here in Ireland to say, hey, this looks like a thing. And it really looks like that the industry is lacking big here. Would you be interested to look deeper into it? And they picked up the topic, which was very fortunate, and we are very grateful for that. And they gave us a 2-year research and development funding where we had access to a great deal of experts, a team of experts here, engineers, lactation consultants. Obviously, the university is linked to the Galway Hospital, so we were able to run interviews with the staff there, the NICU staff, nurses. So it was great deal of knowledge coming together to these 2 years. And we started from scratch saying, what if we would like to do what the infant is doing? Let's go back to the basics. Don't even worry about what breast pumps do. Let's start from scratch. So we went in researched, we went through around 120 research papers to start with. And of course, it was a little bit of a shocking experience that there isn't much research about how breastfeeding actually works, right?
Right.
There's a
I'm nodding my head vigorously for anyone listening and not watching. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a great deal of research about how bottle feeding works, right? Which is like very different, but not so many about how breastfeeding works. And still, some of the information is still contradictory to this day because there's just not enough research went in there to figure it out properly. So we really had to dig deep and go far with it to try to understand how actually suckling works and what are the key elements of it. So that's what we did. And we also interviewed over 150 experts and moms, you being one of them. That was around that time when we met, about all these details of what exactly is wrong. What is the experience in general? Like you would see a lot of research is about what's wrong with pumps or what is mom's experiences about it. You know, that it's painful, discomfortable, uncomfortable, often painful. You would have efficiency issues or effectiveness issues as well. So we started to pin down what the infant is doing, and we were able to kind of identify 5 very distinct functions that are key for suckling to happen. There are a lot of things going on, but these 5 things are absolutely necessary for suckling to happen, for successful suckling to happen. And these were the latch, positioning, so what goes where exactly in the baby's mouth, the sequence, which is a very complex motion of the tongue, the anterior, the posterior tongue, the side, the hard palate, soft palate, the pharynx, like all of these do something else. And the tongue is such an agile organ that it's capable to do different actions in different places, right? At the same time and all synchronize it up. So the sequence is very important. The vacuum is one of them, of course, but it's just one out of the five. And the last one is the compression, of course,
Mm.
that you
Mhm.
do need some level of compression. Detail about that as well, of like where and when that compression happens, that has a great deal of significance. And just to know how much these things matter, it's enough to look at tongue tied babies and
Right.
how much just that small kind of issue completely can compromise the breastfeeding journey. So these are crucial functions, even though they are very small functions, right? But the
Mhm.
combination of these five things end up being necessary for suckling to happen. So once we had those five things pinned down, we were trying to replicate it in technology. And that took really long time because obviously it's not enough. It's very hard to be as good as the tongue. Obviously, it's a very hard task because the tongue is just so agile. It has the most kind of muscle capabilities, like out of all of our body parts and organs, that's the one that's capable of the most sophisticated motions. So yeah, it's hard enough. But if we went from the idea of, okay, we want the functions to work perfectly, then we might be able to create something that's close enough to what the infant is doing. Obviously, it's never going to be as perfect as what the infant is doing. Yeah. So then it started a long time of engineering when we were going through many iterations of these details to pin down the combination that will eventually work and eventually result in the Kala manual breast pump, which is actually also wearable. So we're delighted that we're able to make it a wearable model. And it truly mimics suckling. And it not just looks like suckling, it truly mimics how it works because we found that very important to distinguish that it's the same as when you look at a bird flapping its wings and it flies. I could flap my arms as much as I want, I will never fly. So
Mm.
it's like what and try to replicate that is not enough. We would need it to understand and deep dive into the function itself.
Yeah, and so I didn't realize that it was wearable. It's so you
Mhm.
don't have to hold it on, but you're still manually
Yeah, you manually operate it, but you can put it in your bra, so you don't have to actually hold it.
okay. Oh, wow. That's
Hmm.
neat. Okay, so you were looking at these 5 functions as you were trying to engineer the pump. Now, who did you how did you find the people to help you with all the engineering? That seems like a really big task to find people who could understand these functions enough from a breastfeeding perspective to then apply it to a device that would be able to do this similarly
Yeah,
enough to a baby.
yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was possible. Like there, I think there was a combination of two things that helped us. As the University of Galway is famous for, especially here in Ireland, but I think internationally as well, it's a medtech hub. So there's a lot of medical device development going on here. So it has a good process and routine of getting the right expertise in. There's a lot of people around who has done R&D projects, especially like innovation of new devices, a lot of understanding around that. So we were really able to utilize and rely on the expert of the staff and the teams here within the university and around the university. And the other was coming from our previous connections with lactation consultants. We have a very good connection with the NICU in the Limerick Hospital, where we got a great deal of help from the biology side of things to pin down those exact functions, the anatomy, the physiology that's going on. So we had that knowledge coming in, and then we had a great team of engineers who already are familiar of translating medical and anatomical functions into devices. So I think that knowledge was really necessary to pin this down because there's, as we said, there's so much going on in the infant's mouth, as small as it is, there is just so much going on there with breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a delicate dance that kind of developed over the millions of years that you really need an expert eye to understand how to translate that.
I have a really busy week coming up, and I thought, what better way to reduce my stress than to go onto feastandfettle.com and order meals for that week so I can just take one thing off of my plate by putting delicious meals onto my plate. See what I did there? So I went on to their website. It's really easy to use. I looked at all of the menu options for the week, and some of the things I'm excited about are some grilled steak tips with a delicious Thai peanut sauce and some green beans with a soy sesame sauce that's on the side. But there's so many other things. And that is one of the ways that I am choosing to provide self care for myself so that I can reduce my stress load. If you would like to do the same and spend more time with your family and less time worrying about what's for dinner, go to feastandfettle.com to get home cooked meals delivered right to your front door. And you can get $30 off your first week's delivery by using my code MILK, MILK, and just let somebody else cook for you. You won't regret it. Yeah, exactly. So, which of those functions did you find to be the most difficult, or was it really the most difficult just getting all five
I think that
in
you are spot
together?
on. The
Yeah,
combination of those five, because it's easy to achieve one, but to make sure that one kind of feeds into the other four and it doesn't compromise the other four, that was extremely difficult. We're talking about going through hundreds of different iterations of one tiny part of the silicon of the pump, just a small section, to see how that reacts. No, that's not the correct reaction. I'm putting it under pressure of the other four actions to see if it kind of lines up or it doesn't. So it's a lot of iteration, a lot of trial and error, I must say. But we were sticking to our guns because we were like, we can see this, we see this, understand the functions now. We understand the materials now as well. So we will be able to figure out how to combine it. And eventually we were able to combine it. So we were absolutely delighted when the first sort of successful, we have a breast model, of course, that we were using to test out the prototypes as well. So yeah, that's how it came about. A lot of iterations, a lot of trial and error.
yeah. And so, have has there been anyone who has been using
Well,
the pump yet?
there's a limited of amount that we can use. So being a university project, it has its limitations of how much you're able to test things. So we were able to test to some extent, and the feedbacks are super positive. Like every mom who had a chance to test it at the minimal level that is allowed, they absolutely loved it. And what was important for us is that they reported like absolute similarity to how breastfeeding feels. And for me, that's crucial because that's what really defines. I mean, there is such an important, I don't know how much breastfeeding moms are aware of this, but all the biochemical response that is being triggered through the process of breastfeeding. And if you don't use breastfeeding, but use breast pumps and you experience pain and discomfort, there's a completely different biochemical response being triggered, like you trigger adrenaline instead of prolactin and oxytocin. So you're
Mm.
already compromising your breastfeeding journey just by using pumps. But obviously, these are areas that need a lot of research, and there isn't many out there. They're out there.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So what else do you think people need to know about the Calo breast pump?
The most important thing they would need to know is that we have a Kickstarter campaign in August and September. It's a limited time, and we have a limited amount of breast pumps that are ready to go to moms. Well, by ready, there is, of course, a process to get them ready. But if they go into our Kickstarter, they're able to get their Kala wearable manual breast pump that mimics suckling. So we are very excited, and we're really hoping that a lot of mamas will show up and I think it really resonates with a lot of moms because we all have the same experience with breast pumps. So we need all the support we get to get this out as soon as we can to moms and to spread the word, share the Kickstarter with others. That would be great.
Awesome. So the Kickstarter will be linked in the show notes
Perfect. Yeah.
so that people can access that easily. If anyone wants to try this out, you'll be able to be one of the first to get to try it for the Kickstarter. And what does the Kickstarter do for your company? What does that allow you to do moving forward?
Yeah, so we set up the Kickstarter in a way that the budget that we are collecting would be enough for us to finish the design, so make it more sleek, more ergonomic, so move it from a prototype to a manufacturable stage, set up manufacturing, set up our wrap shop. So literally in a 9 months time, we'll be able to bring this out on the market. But obviously the
Mm.
backers who would be backing us on this would get their pumps earlier.
Mhm. Okay, great. So the Kickstarter would allow people to purchase like the earliest model
That's
of the
correct.
pump.
Correct.
And then anyone who does purchase the Kickstarter would have access to the very first
Exactly. First model.
manufactured model that comes out
That's
in about 9 months.
in about 9 months, yeah.
Okay,
I know it's a bit of a time, so, like,
right.
people maybe who are expecting their babies can already think ahead, but it's I really hope we will get a good amount of moms interested in this.
Yeah, and if you really like it, but you won't be feeding in 9 months, you would have access to purchase it for a gift for somebody else
Exactly.
early on. Yeah, so, there are still benefits of supporting a woman-owned business from somebody who created a pump out of her own struggle and difficulty with breastfeeding. And we all know that the world of pumping needs innovation. We all know that the pump companies have these standard sizes that go out that nobody fits. And then each individual person has to be sized separately and spend money on that. And with your pump, it doesn't work that way because just like the way a baby's mouth can fit to a nipple, it's going to be about the same. So there's not going to be this adjustment of sizing in this direct.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
technology itself takes care of that part. That
Mhm.
was one of the aspect actually that was, like, really hard to pin down, but it was possible to pin down, is that one size would fit all, because if you follow nature's way, what the baby is doing with their tongue, then you are able to accommodate any nipple size and any breast size.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're excited to see how this works, then please check it out. And if you do, I want to hear how it goes. I'm not lactating anymore, so I can't check this out. But I would love to hear all of my listeners and clients who decide that they are interested to let me know. So you can reach out to me once you purchase and be a part of this exciting campaign to change the way that we view pumping and change what we tolerate when it comes to pumping. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this information. And I can't wait to see what you accomplish through the Kickstarter and what comes down the line 9 months from now.
I know it's from now. Thank you so much and much appreciated.
Yeah. And I also do want to mention that you yourself have a podcast.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So that was something else that was coming out of this 2 year project of being frustrated with breast pumps. Another frustration was like to give more support to moms who breastfeed, because we often call like breastfeeding a choice, but it's so much a matter of what support you have actually access to. It's all dependent on that. So the podcast is about that. It's called Let Down Podcast, and yeah, how we let down moms in their journey and what we can do, how we as a society, not just individuals but the society, can support moms to reach that 6 months exclusive breastfeeding milestone. That's the main focus, and I speak with researchers, organizations that are all moving around in this field and see what we can do where we're at.
Yeah, that's great. So, I'll have that linked in the show notes as well so people can check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Lo.
Yes, this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know that old saying that insanity is doing the same thing you've always done and expecting different results? Well, I kind of think that really applies to pumping, because we have had the same basic design for pumps for many, many decades. Since the very first pump design came out, it's been the exact same design, essentially. But if you go back and listen to my episode with Alex, who is an engineer who is also trying to make innovations with pump design, that episode is 132. You'll hear that pumps have been designed essentially the same way since they first came out. There's been really no real innovations. And if you read the book, The Big Letdown by Kimberly Seals Allers, which is linked in my bookshop, which is always linked in the show notes and is one of my all-time favorite books, which helps us understand why feeding milk to our babies is so difficult, you will understand that we have put very little time and energy into making feeding human milk to human babies possible. So, if this is something that you are passionate about, if you are a lactation professional and you are not feeding human milk to your babies, but you want to see how the Cala breast pump works, purchase one and use it with your clients, and then sanitize it in between and give them an opportunity to use it. And if you are someone who is currently feeding human milk to your babies, purchase one of these Cala manual wearable breast pumps so that you can try it out, see how it works, see what it does for your milk supply. And then when the manufactured pump comes out in about 9 months' time, you'll be able to purchase it either for yourself or for somebody else who is making milk for their babies. So let's support a woman-owned business that is trying to make innovation in the world of pumping. This matters. We need to see something other than breast pumps sucking milk out of breasts. So I can't wait to hear your feedback about this. I'm definitely going to get one and see how it works with my clients, even though I'm no longer lactating. And I want to hear your feedback. If you want to talk about this episode or any other, then jump into my Milk Making Minutes community group where we can discuss it and talk about what we're seeing as we use the Cala breast pump. And don't forget that if you are feeling incredibly busy and you live in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, or New Hampshire, you can go to feastandfettle.com and order meals for your family and get $30 off using my code MILK, MILK. And that'll just take one more thing off your plate so that you can spend more time with your family and less time worrying about what to feed them. Have a great week. Bye.